Okay. All right. Good evening, and welcome back to the Libertarian Party of Maine podcast. It's been quite a while, but this is a ongoing project that we're currently working on. We actually brought, and you can see I'm on the screen, I think, presently Matt St. Pierre, who is going to be producing for us going forward. So hopefully he will be a part of the conversations in the future as well. But returning as normal as myself, I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Jason Mataafa. I am the treasurer for the Libertarian Party of Maine. And as usual, we have Dane. Dane, you want to go ahead and reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, Dane Courtois, and I am the chair of the Libertarian Party of Maine.
I know you got a little bit of a promotion in
A little bit.
title the last time you did one of these. Congratulations, I suppose. So tonight's episode is actually, I think, very apropos with a bunch of the things that are going on at the national level, but we're trying to focus primarily on what's happening at the state level. And it's a discussion on fraud in the state of Maine. I think it's a very complex conversation because right now that fraud discussion is being overshadowed a lot by the whole ICE conversation in terms of immigration. But I think when we separate the two things out from each other, I think there's a very valid concern and conversation to be had about fraud, particularly about fraud here in the state of Maine. Um, so I think let's just dive into that. I know that Matt has some stuff set up for us. Do you want to go right into the first video, Matt, and then we can go ahead and talk about reacting to that right after?
A whistleblower alleging that for years, false records were filed for services that were never provided. The agency then reimbursed with tax dollars from Maine's Medicaid program, with overbilling by more than $900,000. But that's not all. While serving in his role in Maine, Ali also was running for president of Jubaland in Africa, where he boasted to a Kenyan media outlet that he helped raise funds for the Jubaland Somali army to help the troops buy weapons, bullets, and food.
Great.
I think that's the best reaction. But yeah, so this is where I think it gets very interesting is the conversation is far more broad than just, okay, well, there was some small fraud and abuse that's happening. We're talking $900,000, and you're talking that the money is being used directly to fund the military of another country, and that's being pulled from state resources. I think it's one of those things where, I think this is where as libertarians we have a very, very strong foot to stand on in the idea that we understand that there is a desire by a lot of people in the country to want to help people, those who are in need, whether it be older people. Maine is one of the oldest populations in the country, whether it be infirm people, and that because of that, we have these social programs. As libertarians, generally speaking, we're probably against most of these social programs, but if we were to say that they had to exist, the hope would be that the money is going to the people who it's supposed to go to. I think
Right.
that's the bare minimum that you would expect, that if you're supposed to spend money on specific people for specific things, that's what it's getting spent on. And I find it very hard to believe that a $900,000 error just gets missed, like it's a rounding error.
Right.
So like, I'm curious what you think about that. Like the idea you could tell me that, oh yeah, $1 million just up and disappeared. Who knew? Like it's
Well,
very
and
hard to believe.
so this story is just talking about Gateway. However, we know that this is occurring in many other NGOs and many other, community development services or whatnot in the state of Maine. I mean, we saw what was going on in Minnesota. The same type of thing, to I'm sure a similar degree, is occurring here as well. Um, and from what I've read and heard, it's a lot more than just 900,000. I think that clip probably just outlined like a subsection of when this story was breaking. Because I've heard upwards of several, like in the millions,
Mhm.
since this story broke like a month ago, I think it was, right?
Yeah, I think the crazy part, like the unfortunate part, and honestly, I think it truly is unfortunate, is that when we talk about Gateway, when we talk about what's happening in Minnesota, it does seem to be focused on a specific community at the moment. That's not to say it's not happening in other communities and that this isn't like it's a one-off, because if there's foreign abuse happening with this one community, you can convince me that's happening with a bunch of other communities, whether it be the
Right.
veteran community or something else. But it is unfortunate that it's being focused on this one community in particular, especially when we're going through this conversation about immigration. So for those who are unaware of Maine and actually I think Minneapolis politics in general, um, both states took in a large portion of Somali migrants under a combination of asylum and just general migration. The concern that was being raised primarily by conservatives in both states at the time was that, hey, these people are not from this country. They should not be able to receive any type of benefits. These monies are meant to be lent on US born citizens. And I remember here in the state of Maine, the conversation being that, well, Maine, we're a welcoming people. If we want to help our neighbors, it's the main way that we try to help each other out. And I get that. I do think there's a bit of like manipulation when it comes to that type of language, because if you had told a bunch of Mainers in plain language, hey, we're gonna take $1 million of yours in just one instance and send it to a foreign country to pay for bullets so that they can go ahead and have their own civil
Right.
war, I don't think that referendum would have passed anyway. So like this
Yeah.
whole the way that this language gets weaponized to like strike at the heart and the sincerity of people who actually want to do good, I think is what makes this like this really, really sad, unfortunate, actually just like kind of disgusting at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know that more and more is coming out, you know, about this. I honestly I just saw a story from the Maine Wire last night, that was Robert Wessels went on a ride along with John, what is it, Featherden? What's the reporter's name?
John Featherstone.
Yeah. Went on a ride along with him, and they went to this guy's house, or they went to a facility that was supposedly providing care to like an autistic guy whose brother contacted the Maine Wire out of concern because he hadn't heard from him in a while, which was very unorthodox. And he had gone there to his house like a week ago to take his brother out for his birthday, and the staff there said he didn't want to go. Like basically said, denied that he was able to leave the house, which is obviously extremely wrong. Um, I actually spoke to Robert Wessels today because I saw that last night and I had to call him and be like, what? Like, how much of this is like the video production of the Maine Wire? Because we all know that it doesn't matter what level of media it is, they're gonna clip and edit to drive their point home.
Well,
But he there was one instance where there's this staff member that they first meet who doesn't speak English well, like at all. Um, they were there to see this brother who's supposedly receiving care there, and the guy went in for like 2 minutes, came back out, said he doesn't want to come down and see you guys. Well, come to find out, the brother had actually called his brother who's under the care, and the staff member didn't even come to the guy's room. He went inside, pretended like he was talking to the guy and explaining to him that the Maine Wire was there and wanted to talk to him, and he didn't even talk to him. I mean, and that's not Gateway. That's something else, right? And then I saw another video today of the same. Not this. Was it the same group? It was the same day, where they went to. I think it was Lighthouse something. It was
yeah.
some healthcare thing group where they went in. They wanted to talk to someone there. A staff member asked them to wait in the lobby. They kind of shot the shit for 20 minutes until the police arrived, and the police said, the company doesn't want you to be here. Would you please leave? And they're like, what? Like, it's very, like, it seems like all these different things that we're seeing. And granted, I'm getting a lot from the Maine Wire. I'll admit that, but they're also the only one that seems to care to investigate this.
Actually, I think that leads perfectly into the next video, and that this is conversation that's being had by conservative and even libertarian circles in the state of Maine for the last 6 months to a year, a lot of this stuff. But it does seem like now this is gaining a lot more national attention to the point that now the administration seems to be taking some eye on it. So I know we have a video with Dr. Oz talking about what the administration is thinking when it comes to what's
2
happening
weeks
in Maine.
ago, Health and Human Services investigators released a report on Maine's autism program in which they identified at least $45 million in improper payments. But But that's not all. They learned that the program's payouts increased more than 50% in just 4 years. They found that treatment centers are clustered in small geographic areas, just like they did in Minnesota. They reviewed paperwork that was missing crucial information, like whether the kids receiving these services had been properly diagnosed with autism in the first place. 100% of the claims they examined had problems. And most troubling of all, they discovered that Maine had never conducted a statewide review of its autism program.
What? How is that even possible? There's literally that to me screams that like there is no there's not even a will to pretend like you're doing things the right way.
Yeah, I think so. The way I look at this, I think this is very similar to what we see at the national level, where you have like insider trading with a lot
Right.
of members of Congress and Senate. Since that is not something that happens or gets focused on the state level, because they don't have access to that same information, I think this is basically the equivalent of like, okay, I know this company so happens to be in business. When you look at a lot of these things too, for example, when we look at Gateway, Gateway was also like one of like the top three donators to the Maine DNC in terms of
So that was
candidates.
two different groups though.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Name, same owners, but one was a nonprofit and the other was like a PAC, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. But I do think it is, I think one thing that we can say definitively is that the idea that $45 million in improper payments just so happens to happen when the state as a whole has a budget of about $11 billion. So it's not like we're California where you have like a $125 billion budget
Mm.
and like $1 million here, $1 million there can just slip through the cracks, even though it shouldn't. But when you're talking about like that large of a scale of numbers, I think it's one of those things that just happens with accounting, whether it's good or bad. When you're saying $45 million in a single year, and that you're saying that increase in cost happening year after year after year, like it's not coincidental that the more and more the cost goes up, the more and more fraudulence there is, and the more and more
Right.
like that theft is taking place. So
And
like,
also just think anecdotally, like in your own life, how often do you hear people complaining about lack of services in this realm? All the time. And it's not like so, but if all of these services are popping up and all of this money is being funneled in from federal and from state budgets, where's it going? I mean, I know it's just anecdotal, but like if all that money was here and the services were actually being rendered in the way that the market needed, you wouldn't be hearing people complaining about it consistently
yeah,
all the
I agree.
time.
When it comes to healthcare in Maine too, like that's, I know we're gonna get into some like some discussions about that when we go over the, say, the state portion of this, but like when we look about, so in terms of like medical infrastructure, I know Dane, Kate, your wife would be able to talk about this like at length, but the
Right.
amount of like hospital shutdowns we've seen the last 5 years,
Oh yeah.
how I think it's like right now it's like 86% of, or something like that. If I think it was 86% of all care in Maine's being handled basically via like urgent care or main health facilities. So it's like it's like it's not like we have like a ton of options anyway. So like if you do have a child with autism, God forbid, it's not like you have anywhere else to go. Like you have to be a part of this system. You
Right.
have to go through this process, which means that there is likely going to be some of this, like this, it's the theft. Forget about negligence. At this point, $45 million isn't just negligence, that's theft.
Yeah.
Someone's robbing $45 million in improper payments. So like,
Again, like we all get stolen from to fund it, and then the people are stealing from those programs to buy themselves, Mercedes friggin'
yeah.
SUVs.
Sad thing is, honestly, and I say this, it makes me sad to think of this, is that even this conversation about misallocation or misuse of funds has become politically charged, or it's become a left
Yeah,
versus
right.
right issue when it shouldn't be.
No,
Like even immigration to an extent shouldn't be a left versus right. But when you're talking about $45 million, $1 million, however much money in the state of Maine of improper spending, this is something that every taxpayer in the state should be concerned about when we have like the fifth highest tax burden in the entire country. So it's like you would think that like if you're living in a place like Maine where the cost of living is extremely high, our tax burden is extremely high. You'd want every single one of those dollars to be used in the way it's intended to. But of course, as everything else, like it purposely gets pitted as this. If you're concerned about this, then you're a Trumper, and if you're a Trumper, you're a fascist. Like it goes
Yeah,
through that logical progression where it
it's
just makes it
very.
very difficult for anything to come from it.
We all know it's very convenient and easy for people to other people that you disagree with, and view them as evil, you know.
Well, talking about evil, I think this leads perfectly into the third one because this third
Hey,
one we're about to talk.
Jason,
Oh, yeah.
real quick, one thing just to hit on that. Dr. Oz mentioned it, and it's an interesting point where he talked about all of these facilities being clustered together. I mean, and when he says that, it's at the same address, at the same building. And also, Maine Wire, I don't know, about a month ago, published this list. They'd done a Freedom of Information Act, whatever it's called in the state, is a slightly different name in the state, where they looked at all of the autism home health facilities that had been open since the COVID era rules were relaxed. And there was, probably 50 on the list of businesses that had popped up since 2020 to provide this, just raking in $20-30 million each. So it becomes a learned business. They're all in the same building, teaching each other how to do this.
It almost seems like they're being coached somehow, whether it be through the structure of the system itself, or if it's more nefarious and they're actually getting instructions.
That's one. I agree with you, but I think this is where the uncomfortable conversation has to come in as well, because this actually does tie into the immigration issue. The idea of immigration in America traditionally has been you come to the country, you can have your own cultural pockets, you can have your Chinatown, you can
Right.
have your Little Italy, so on and so forth. But you were expected to assimilate to within American culture, follow the ideals, follow the laws, so on and so forth. I think that we have, in the last 30 years in particular, have created this idea that if you come into the country, you can basically set up your own little baby country within the country. So you can take the same principles, ideas, everything you had from where you came from, bring it here, and then you can bring more of your family and friends in and create this whole enclave where you guys basically help each other out and don't actually have to follow any kind of rule of law. And I think this happens a lot. This happened historically quite a bit in different immigrant communities. I mean, every time it did happen, there would be like a quick strike back against it. People would at least be able to talk about it out loud and get brought up. People would go, "Hey, this is wrong. We need to fix it," and we move on. This happened a lot in like Manhattan when the Irish and the Italians came in, where these little enclaves formed. There's like the Gangs of New York movie is a similar principle that you have these different subgroups. They basically treated New York like it was their own little private country, and eventually that they all went to war, killed a bunch of each other, and the state got involved. I think that is an honest conversation we need to start having as not just as libertarians, but of Americans. The idea that, sure, we want to be hospitable and welcome people in, but if you are going to enter the country, it cannot be with the idea that you're going to fund your own little colony within this country. And then if you choose to abuse the system, you're not going to pass that knowledge along to 12 of your cousins so that way you can all abuse the system together.
Right.
I think once you get down to that place, you create this really big animosity and mistrust, which is how you can end up to a place where I know like we've had this conversation offline about like when some of the ICE thing that's happening and how a lot of it is unfortunate. There's a lot of concerns about civil liberties, so on and so forth. But for the people on the right side of the aisle, the way I know a lot of ways they look at it is, why should I care? Like if you're coming here with you and your buddies, you want to take a bunch of my money, like I don't care about your civil liberties. That is the honest viewpoint. And we could
Right.
disagree with it all we want. And we could say how it's not right morally, so on and so forth. But if you were living in a community and you saw a group of people move in and now they're all driving, to your point, around in G-Wagons and, and Land Rovers, and
Right.
you're on Maine Section 8 to try to get by your rent, good luck. Like, good luck having that to be an integrated, well-functioning community. Like, it's a really complex conversation. I do think they feed into one another, but as everything is politically charged, like it just becomes very, very difficult to actually have to find the ways to address it.
I agree. with that, let's go to the next clip with because this kind of
This is the one that really gets me worked up.
bookends the whole thing.
Going on in Maine, too, and residents there are demanding answers. Some members of the community, in fact, calling on the DOJ to investigate possible fraud within the Lewiston Shooting Fund, as we learn that nearly $2 million went to 29 different nonprofits since the October 2023 shooting left a lot of Americans dead. That money was supposed to go directly to them. And get this, some of those nonprofits only serve the immigrant community, like Gateway Community Services. Now, you should know, prior to this, Gateway was accused of misusing Medicaid funds and was recently visited by Homeland Security investigators.
So this is the one that actually gets me like to the point where I'm like, all right, my sympathy's gone.
Right.
Because I think there's like, because there were secondary effects that came from the Lewiston shooting. Not only was it a horrible tragedy in Maine, that affected a very financially wrought community in terms of Lewiston, in terms of it's had its ups and downs financially. It's had gone through this little phase of trying to rebuild the main street, and they're constantly trying to find a way to revitalize the town. This horrible tragedy happens, a bunch of lives are lost. Then these services, and actually I don't know if you actually listened to this, on the Sean Ryan podcast, Steve Robinson from the Maine Wire was on there.
Yeah,
He
I
actually
saw
spoke
it.
about this in detail. And the way he mentioned it, and I think this is what gets me annoyed, is that originally when this process started, when they were trying to collect funds, try to help these families, it was, okay, we have like 12 different GoFundMe accounts or Give Send Go accounts, and we'll go ahead and like start these little small accounts, and we'll collect the funds, and we'll go ahead and give it out. The state government got involved and said, hey, how about we streamline this process? We'll basically put this through the main grant process where we'll consolidate all the funding into the state office in Augusta. Like, we'll collect all the fundings. We'll give you a website. Everybody goes to that same website. The funds will all get put together. And because we're at the state level, we'll be able to make sure the money goes to the right place, the right people, at the right time. Then you get $1 million getting sent to a bunch of organizations that have nothing to do with these families, that these are basically like local NGOs are servicing specific communities. Not to keep picking at the Somali community in Maine, but the Somali community in Maine.
Right.
So the idea that two things, general libertarian principles, centralization of power is always a thing to be concerned about. So you centralize the process of collecting funds with the idea that you'll be able to better distribute it, and then long behold, abuse and fraud takes place. Big surprise. Like,
Right.
it's one of those things, like, you couldn't like write it on like in a book. Like, if you told me this was happening, I'd like, no, like, we're so much more clever than that. There's no possible way. And then here we go. It's just it's crazy to see.
Yeah, it's so infuriating. And it's like what well, I was actually just having this conversation with Kate, because we were talking about not this specifically, but we were talking about former Prince Andrew getting arrested, right? And it's like, okay, so one guy, you know, as a token bad guy gets his recompense. And it feels like the same, like all this, we can see all of this happening around us, and nothing's being done by law enforcement, nothing's being done by the governor. Not like, no one seems to have any motivation to actually right these wrongs.
Mhm.
And what do we
Yeah.
do as citizens other than scream into the void and do a podcast and post on Facebook and, you know, just get pissed off?
And, you know, when you look at some of those, and I think one of the members was a committee that decided where the money was going to go to, and one of the committee members was, I'm pretty sure it was Osman, the
Oh,
the
yeah.
guy from Lewiston that
Lost his
but
seat at the city council.
the one that was on city council with the gun charges, you know, directing it to right back to the community. The one that really sticks on the list when you look at it, the Somali Bantu initiative, that teaches Somali immigrants how to farm in Maine. I don't see any connection between the Lewiston shooting and the people that were hurt and killed there, and teaching Somalis how to farm in Maine.
I mean, just to play devil's advocate a little bit here, and I hate that I'm doing this, but everyone in that community was quote unquote victimized by this terror attack effectively, right?
Yeah.
But
Like,
that doesn't mean that doesn't. I'm saying like this is probably the reasoning that those who decided where the funds went were thinking.
I would agree with you if those funds were being directed more broadly against many different groups, both socially and ethnically. But I think that's where this becomes very disturbing. Is it wasn't as if like this
One
was
group.
going to one particular group
Yeah.
and one group of organizations that so happen to work with that group, and it also goes to a voter base that is like 96.7% Democrat in terms of the electorate. So it's like,
Weird.
yeah, who knew? The thing that and this is
You
where
can buy
even
votes? What?
we'll talk about that even more later.
I know.
I think this is where it also gets even more disturbing is that unfortunately, because of what happened in Lewiston a few weeks ago, well, months ago now, we saw the passing of a potential red flag law here in the state of Maine. And if you remember some of the propaganda being used to go ahead and push that forward, the Lewiston shooting was like at the top of the list.
It was, but at the same time, all the legislators that were in support of that were actually branding it as a prophylactic to suicide, if you remember.
But either or, like it's like
just for those that are watching, a right delayed is a right denied, and this does far more harm than it does any good.
Yeah.
It's talking about the red flag specifically, which I
No,
think
I agree. Yeah.
to effect this Saturday. I think it goes into effect tomorrow, actually.
Is it really?
I believe so.
Yeah. So it's just like I think the Lewiston shooting what it taught us is that even when government tries to quote unquote do the right thing and help people, it's really, 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 really bad at it. And because government is just made up of people, and because the state of Maine, the way it is, the way that we have a supermajority on one side of the aisle, so on and so forth, we can go on days talking about it. Because of that, to expect those people not to use the funds in a way that benefits themselves is at best naive and at worst like diabolical. Like,
Right.
and I think this would be in any state. Like, if we were in a supermajority red state, and something like this happened, there would be a valid concern of like, hey, what is this going to go fund? Like, is this going to go fund a bunch of right wing causes? And should it? The answer is still no. And there'd be a reason to go ahead and go, hey, why is this happening? But it does seem that in Maine, whenever you have these conversations or try to have these conversations, it just becomes very like unfruitful and destructive, and it's just sad to see.
Yeah, agreed.
So let's go ahead and get
let's
to the
keep
state of the state, because this is where things get a little juicy.
Let's
So-
keep swirling down this black pill.
This rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Let's move to the state of the state. So we did have the state of the state that took place a few weeks ago. There's already been a bunch of stuff that came out of that. There was a bunch of things that were touched on, including Governor Mills talking about affordability in the state of Maine. I think there was a lot of talk about the price of electricity, trying to find initiatives to go ahead and bring more people into the state of Maine, bring businesses back to the state of Maine and create commerce. I think it's all very hilarious that like these things have been talked about in Maine since I've been here. I've only been in the state for about 5 years now. Since the day I've got here, these same topics are the same topics people bring up every single year. Like,
Yep.
how are we going to bring affordability down? How are we going to bring the cost of power down? How are we going to create more housing? What are we going to do about the homelessness in the state of Maine? But then, like, every year it comes back to, well, this time we got it all figured out, guys. Like, we're going to get it going. So,
Right.
like, I'm curious, what were some of your big takeaways from the state of state thing?
So I only really saw clips of the state of the state. I cannot stand listening to Mills try and cobble together a cogent thought, because she can't. So I only saw clips. my initial takeaways were she's obviously running for higher office, and she's obviously using this as a stump speech for herself, which is exactly what it presented to me. Even right down to the like she felt so sanctimonious. Like, we're gonna send $300 to the worst off of Mainers that are really struggling. Like, I don't know how that doesn't read like attempting to buy votes like she did in 2020 or 2022.
Yeah.
It was in the middle of COVID where she did the same exact thing. She sent out checks to everyone. Oddly, on another election year for her.
To get some more context to what Dane is talking about, I know that, Matt, you have a video ready for that. Is it possible to pull that one up real quick?
Yeah, just
Are we going out of order now?
video 5, and then we can do
All
it.
Dane's fault.
So tonight, I propose that we help Maine people breathe a little easier with what we can, where we can, by sending them an affordability relief check for $300 each, drawn from our record-high rainy day fund to offset in some small way the cost of goods and groceries that are increasing because of tariffs and other circumstances beyond our state's control.
I love the reaction of the people sitting in the house, and they're like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
she even acknowledged it in some small way. Like, she knew it was a bullshit friggin', like, just, oh my God. How do people not see? I don't know. I don't know what the general public thought about this, but it's so obvious.
For anyone who's not aware, I'm just going to give this number really quick. So leading into the end of fiscal year 2025, it was originally thought that we were going to have about a 450 million to 650 million deficit. We thought that we'd be in the red, that we behind the books. We finished fiscal year 2025 with a $152 million surplus, and I think it's like 75% of that got diverted into the rainy day fund. The idea of the Maine rainy day fund, what it's supposed to be there for, is that, hey, listen, we have projects, we have a natural disaster, we have something happen in the state of Maine that is not already budgeted for us through the Maine budget. We need money to access to be able to take care of this. How can we go ahead and grab that money and use it and allocate it so that way we can take care of this issue and problem? To your point, Dane, what she is doing is a bribe.
Yeah.
Like, she's just basically saying, like, hey, here's $300, which, let's be honest, $300 in the state of Maine. My last energy bill, and Dane, you've been to my house, Matt. Hopefully one day you'll be here. I live in like a little 750 square foot house in the middle of nowhere. $300 like just barely covers my 1 month with electricity bill.
Yeah, or one
That's
trip
what
to
it's
the
done.
grocery store.
Or a one trip to the grocery store, which I mean,
it's not
thanks, I
nothing.
guess, but
Yeah.
but it's like one of those things where, and this is also where I, as someone who studied economics, the idea that a government can have a surplus from taxation is asinine, insane, and insulting.
Yeah, it's
Because
offensive.
what you're basically admitting is that we stole too much of your money, and we have extra left over.
And if you're really good, we'll give it back.
Yeah, thank you so much for like giving us the money that we did not earn. Here's $300 back as a thank you. Like, it's just the whole principle and the idea of it.
It's not going to everyone. It's being preferentially distributed to the lower income brackets. Which, sure, like, do the rich people need the money as much? No. However, they still earned it, and it still was same amount was stolen from them, same as it was to the lower income people.
And I want to be as charitable as possible, but let's also be as honest as possible. It is the top like 20% of income earners in Maine who pay like 86% of the taxes.
Oh, and that's not just Maine. That's across the board.
That's across the board, yeah. But like, I get the principle and the idea of being like, oh, we need to help these people, but again, you're bribing them. You're going, hey, you're probably a low information voter. We know you're broke. We know that like if someone like me who's middle upper class is having a hard time with a $300 electric bill,
Right.
God knows if you're on like a state assistance, you probably are struggling. So now I'm gonna send you $300, and when it comes to election time, go, hey guys, remember who sent you that $300? Come to the polls. I'm running for Senate now. Like it's one of
But
those
even
things where it's so
even still,
overt. It's kind of like
it's such a
crappy.
novel like it's just a political tactic, really. It's such okay, cool. So you're gonna send $300 to someone, to a bunch of people right now. The election's not till November. So if she's really gonna try and use this as a tool, right? You're gonna still have 5 months worth of back in the shit, without that. Why don't you get to the root cause of, how about you stop taxing everyone as much? How about you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Keep an eye on the commercials as we go closer. I'd be really curious to see if you start seeing or hearing commercials when we get closer to election of that.
That
Her
being, like,
reminding
referenced?
everybody,
Yeah.
don't forget who sent you that $300 check.
Yeah.
Yep. In her defense, Trump did the same thing.
True.
I mean,
Yep.
in his defense, Biden did it much more overtly when he said, "If you vote for Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, the checks will go out tomorrow." Those were pretty
Hilarious.
much his exact
Yeah.
words.
I do
Right.
remember. I remember when COVID happened and getting the first like stimulus check, and it was actually like the fake Trump signature on it.
Yeah,
And I remember in that moment going to myself like, "What are we doing here, guys? Like,
yeah.
come on, like stop it. You cannot convince me that this 76-year-old boomer is sitting in the Oval Office just lifting his finger going, all right, like stop it. Like don't do that to me. Don't insult me like that. It's
Bread and
insane.
circuses, man. We're in Plato. we're in another act of Plato's cave, man.
It is. Well, this actually leads into like when we talk about things like affordability, I think this leads into what was supposed to be the video that we went over first, which is the universal healthcare and healthcare is a human right video. So Matt, can you pull that up real quick, and we'll go ahead and talk about that.
Health care is a human right.
Oh my God. Nice. Nice.
We know it. Most people know that now. Look, the federal government is capable of big things.
Government.
It was the federal government that created Social Security and then Medicare. The federal government that passed the Civil Rights Act. It was the federal government that built the interstate highway system in the 50s under Dwight Eisenhower. The federal government sent a man to the moon. It's time for the federal government to take its head out of the sand and address the crisis of health care head on, and nothing short of universal health care is acceptable.
Oh my God. Again, missing the fucking root cause. Flat out, the problem with healthcare affordability in this country is not because it is because of regulations, and it's because of the racket from the insurance agency and the insurance lobby, right? If we had a true free market, what happens? Class, what happens when we have a free market? Quality goes up and prices go down.
Yeah.
Because we have a captured cronyist version of capitalism right now. There's backroom deals done all the time from lobbyists and the insurance agencies and from the healthcare provider division or sector to politicians to write legislation to push out like any real free market solutions to this.
Yeah, I think healthcare is so complex that, and I think a lot of Americans, when they talk about universal healthcare, it's always they go back to the Norwegian country models. Always, always, always. And I hate to tell Americans this, and I've already fallen into this group as a person who's been here long enough. When you're talking about the Norwegians, you're talking about like some of the healthiest people in Europe.
Mm.
You're talking about people who literally like
do sauna every day
and go into ice baths in a lake, and like it's a very different culture. It's a culture that also had very, 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 very low to almost non-existent immigration. It's also countries who, for the most part, were not involved in World War I, World War II, or expansionism at all. They're very isolationist. They are very high tax revenue, but they also have the highest amount of transfer of wealth within their own GDP, meaning that money that's there stays there. They don't send it other places.
Right.
Like they spend the money inside their own economic sphere, so the money just keeps rotating around and around and around and around.
I
It
mean,
doesn't leave.
to be fair, Norway got fucked up in World War II.
Yeah, it did, but they'll
Yeah.
go easy. They'll be fine.
But I mean, you're touching on something there, and this might come across as a bit, I don't know, nationalistic, but they have a homogenous culture in Norway,
They do.
right? And that kind of goes back to the what we were talking about earlier and what we've talked about before of like what is an American? Is it someone that was born here? No, not necessarily. What makes an American is the adherence to our founding principles, our post enlightenment ideals of the individual being sovereign over themselves, right? It's that cohesion of that culture, and Norway has that. We've lost a lot of that, and I think that these are the types of things that outpour when you start diluting the culture. Not, I don't care about the race or ethnicity thing, but when you start diluting the culture of staunch individualism and bootstrap, tie up your bootstraps or whatever, you kind of get this more and more of people with their hands out.
Yeah, and actually, I will go ahead and make the argument for the progressive and for the populist because I don't necessarily disagree with this part of the argumentation. The argumentation being that, hey, if we are in a country that has a progressive tax system, that has taxation at all, that has the money to spend on foreign adventurism, that has the money to have what did Trump just want, a $5 trillion defense budget for like, if we are a country that is able to make these decisions and say we can spend money on these things, right, wrong, or indifferent, then the first thing you should be paying is for my healthcare. That is the thought process, both from the populist and from
Yeah.
the progressive. And I think when you take it from that lens of, hey, what is our annual budget and how much of it actually gets spent on things for Americans? Okay, great. Take that $1.5 trillion defense budget, knock it in half, and use that towards healthcare. That would be the argument. And when you make that argument, again, as libertarians, we would say, well, I don't want any taxation. Like, I don't want you to have any of this money. Like, you shouldn't have any of this money. Like, this should be all left to the private sector. And I wouldn't disagree. But I think they do have a valid position of, okay, if we're going to be doing this thing, if you're going to be taking all my money anyway, I want healthcare out of it.
Right.
The problem is, and I think this goes back to what we talked about, is because we don't actually let healthcare operate within a free market system, because there is no competition, and I think more importantly, up until about a week ago, because we subsidized medicine for the countries in Europe that do have socialized medicine, that is something that most Americans don't understand, is that America produces like 87% of all the patents in the world when it comes to medicine. However, those same patents, when they get sent abroad, for example, if you go to the UK and you have a medication, because they have a socialized system, they have a fixed price. They're not paying more than what they already have budgeted. So the way that the company is able to sell that product into that country is selling it at their fixed price. What they lose in terms of margin, they just put it right back into the American market and have us pay for it.
Yep.
That's how all these socialized nations are able to afford their medicine. It isn't because they're paying the market rate. It's because we as Americans are subsidizing their medicine.
Yes, and
So
not just the medicine itself, but the research to develop it.
all of it, all
Yes.
of it. And
Yep.
we don't even, and the thing is, we don't even manufacture it anymore. Most of it's made in China. So like
Correct.
we're doing all the legwork in terms of the intellectual work to create these beautiful things. Medicine and how far it's come is an amazing thing. America as a nation should be proud of what it's done there. But the idea that you would take that advent and then have other countries produce it for you in China and then give a break to other countries that want to buy it from you and then take all that cost and make the Americans subsidize it, it's like it's a no-win all the way around. So like it's one of those things where I understand the argument that the populists and the progressive are trying to make. I don't think it's an invalid argument. I think their prescriptions are obviously asinine.
Right.
And up until a week ago, this is one of the things that Trump has done right. And anyone who follows me on Facebook will know that I like to rail on him recently because I think that he has been failing in many things. But one thing he did do well is he did address this halfway in terms of basically telling Europe that, hey, you have to pay the same price. Like if it's $5 a pill here, it's $5 a pill there. My issue with that, though, is if the pill costs 60 cents to make, company can still make a very generous profit at $3 a pill, $5 a pill, whatever it is. That's I think that's where you're gonna have to sadly have government intervention, because I don't think the pharmaceutical company is gonna do it on its own, because they have the
I would
ability
agree
that
with that.
their own crony system.
I mean, there's
So
a
it's not
there's
gonna
a
change.
there's a distinct difference of what ought to be and what can be
Right.
right now, right?
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
As an anarchist, I'm very familiar with this paradigm.
I know. Oh, I know. Listen, we'll talk about anarchism on a
Yeah,
different podcast. Matt could be
right.
the referee so that we could finally have this brawl. So we'll see.
Yeah. Let's
All right, let's go to
let's move along.
let's go to the next one, because this
We
like
also expanded health coverage for postpartum care, a full year postpartum. And we increased funding for family planning services provided by organizations like Planned Parenthood and Maine Family Planning, on which so many people rely on for primary and preventative care. And earlier today, I was proud to announce that once again, where the federal government has fallen down, Maine will stand tall. And I propose in my supplemental budget a one-time appropriation of $2.25 million in general funds to replace the money that this president and Congress have cruelly cut from Planned Parenthood and Maine Family Planning's primary care for services.
How many people were just walking out there? Like half a dozen?
it was mostly the GOP reps that was trying to walk out.
Right.
And so I actually have done a lot of research on this lately because of my own come to Jesus that I've had the last year. And because I'm an economist by trade, I can't help it. So there's two really important figures when we talk about parenthood that we need to be very aware of. My wife, Samantha, would tell me, and I think she's right, is that Planned Parenthood isn't just abortion, and it's true. It's not just abortion. They do
Mostly
some,
abortion, no.
they do some primary care. That was going to go to my last place. 86% of all funds allocated to Parenthood, excuse me, because I hate this thing, Planned Parenthood, is towards abortion care. Like
Yep.
it just is. Not saying that that's all they do, but it's a vast majority. However, this is where, when it comes to the state of Maine, where I think it gets complicated. So let's take away the religious or moral argumentation, and let's go purely to like economics. The average birth rate in America, which is already below replacement level. So for those who don't know,
Is it? I
yeah,
thought we were okay in America for demos.
so 2.1 births per woman is replacement level. So if
Okay.
one replace myself, I replace my husband, and 0.1 extra is replacement.
Right. Which means
Currently,
like, one out of it, or like 10 out of one out of every 10 couples have a kid or something like that.
basically,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right now, America sits at 1.7 births per woman, so we're below replacement level. That's already a concern, and that's something that is a larger conversation to be had. Do either one of you want to guess what the birth rate is in Maine?
In Maine? Oh
Yeah.
Jesus! I bet it's 0.4.
Jesus, if ever got that bad, it would be a state collapse. But
Okay.
as of right now in Maine, it's 1.47. So we're
Well,
below.
that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Well, sorry.
Oh, got you. Yeah, got you. Yeah. So yeah, you're not far off then. Yeah, 1.47. What this does is it puts us at the lowest birth rate in the U.S. Maine has the
Seriously?
lowest birth rate in the U.S.
Well, we all are also one of the oldest populations generally. So
Exactly. So that leads me to the second point, which is you're going right there already. The median age in America right now is 39.1 years. In Maine, it is 45 years. So we're the
Sorry,
oldest state in the country.
refresh me. Median is the middle number, right?
Correct.
Across
Yep.
the whole plot, not
That's the whole
average. Yeah.
Not average. Yep. So we are 6 years above the median while also having the lowest birth rate.
Which means we're top loaded with a lot of olds.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think this ties into the conversation we just had a moment ago when it comes to the idea of universal healthcare. Is I don't think that Mills or the left in this state is dumb. I think they're very, very, very aware that they have a collapsing population in terms of like they can't reflect the people. The state can't
Right,
replace.
that's why they're
itself.
importing a bunch of new Mainers, right?
Correct.
That's why they
That's
have an
part
outfit,
of it.
new Mainers.
But I also believe is that what you have to do then is you have to find a way to subsidize medicine for the people who are here who are older, and that's how you go ahead and solidify your voter base. Basically saying that, hey, if you have a bunch of boomers in your state, you need to offer them healthcare. You just have to. Because if you don't, they'll just vote for someone who will. And the Republicans, which I will give them credit for, so far have not been willing to budge on this. But the left in the state of Maine is, and they know the demographics of the state. They know that we have a very old population. They know that we're not having many kids, so they don't have to appeal to policies that necessarily would benefit a 34-year-old because not enough of them. The voting base is like above the age
Right.
of 55.
Right. Yeah.
So what do those people need? Well, they need health care. They need access to all these different organizations that
Yeah.
give you in-home care. They need all these.
At the end of the day, who do I care to capture? The people that actually get in their car and go to the polls and actually check the box for me.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this does lean into your conversation before in terms of immigration. Who's going to do the work? Like, who's going to actually go and provide these services for the older population? Well, if you're not having enough kids to do that, now you need people who are willing to do that work. So you bring in an immigrant population. This already happened. This happened in the UK about like 25 years ago, where the National Health Service in the UK, if you look at the actual statistics, I think it's like 40% of home care workers are Pakistani. So this is the thing that the
Not
UK did
surprising.
decades ago, where we
Yeah.
basically went and said that, all right, we're going to go ahead and import a bunch of foreign labor to go ahead and do these services that native UKers are not doing. Because we have, I think the UK is in a similar position that Maine is, that we have an aging population. We actually do have socialized medicine. People who are young and ambitious leave the country and go to other parts of Western Europe, Dubai, the United States. So you're left over with a population that needs care. They generally do need some care, but who's going to do that work for them? You go ahead and import that population to do so. Same thing with like if you go down to some of the southern states like up to like Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, you'll see a trend that a lot of the home care workers or Caribbean, lots of Jamaicans, lots of
Oh
Haitians,
yeah. Yeah.
and it's the same general principle of, okay, well, we need people to do this work. People are not willing to do this work, honestly, because the wage is like horrible. Like if you told me they're gonna pay me $16 an hour to go wipe someone else's ass, like I'll go flip burgers. I'm good.
Right.
Like,
Right.
so you need someone who's willing to do that work, and you can go ahead and incentivize someone by saying, "Hey, come here illegally. We'll give you a job wiping asses." And is it still better than where you came from? Most
Probably.
likely.
Yeah.
So it's just there's all these different issues they do. I think they all intersect with one another, and I think that's why this conversation is far more complex. And this is where the GOP does fall short, is that they attack these things individually when they need to attack it a little bit more holistically. So they
Right.
have to attach it all at once and be able to draw those connections one to the other, to the other, to the other. And if they did that and communicated well, I think that they would have a much better outlook than probably getting slaughtered in the midterms.
I mean, we all know, like, as as the major third party in the country, and in most states, we know that like the mudslinging in the two wings of the same bird are just going to encapsulate that as like quick and digestible as possible to get to their people, to mobilize them emotionally, to get them to do what they want, right? Whereas like we take a different effect, right? We're a different approach, and we want to actually approach this with some nuance and some logic and reason and what actually is going to work best for everyone, not just for my people to get to the polls and vote me in.
Yeah. I think that's very well into the next video before we start going into some of our candidate discussion, which is about the unaffordability of the Affordable Care Act. So, Matt, you want to go ahead and play that?
The progress we've made in health care at the state level is in jeopardy, though, because of the president and the Congress. As you know, Congress passed and the president signed legislation that I'll call the Big Bad Bill, a bill that cut billions of dollars in health care funding over the next decade in order to finance tax breaks primarily for billionaires who don't want them, don't even need them. What a backward policy. And while Maine will receive $190 million through the Rural Health Transformation Program, and we'll use those funds, well, we'll put them to good use, God, those funds pale in comparison to the estimated $5 billion in health care funds that Maine will lose over the next 10 years. What's that about? Because of the federal government's actions, upwards of 33,000 people across Maine are likely to lose access to health care. And that means missing out on basic preventative care, cancer screenings, treatment for addiction, and the fundamental basic care that every person in this state, in this nation, deserves. The loss of health care for those folks will lead to increased uncompensated care that will be absorbed by our hospitals first. They're already in difficult financial straits. And they'll be forced to pass those costs on to consumers, onto Maine people who will pay more for health insurance or out-of-pocket care as a result.
So this is why I do wish that Kate was on this podcast, because she'd be
Yeah.
able to elaborate this a bit more. But I think what's very interesting is that Mills is basically insinuating that the state had already been doing a very good job of funding and paying its bills when it comes to medical care in the state. And it hasn't been that case for like over a decade.
Well, we
But,
know
like,
that that's completely false, though. Like the state hadn't paid their bills to several hospitals in the tune of like several $1 million,
Mhm.
like just last year.
Yep. So I think what she's trying to do is pivot
Cover
and
her
basically
ass
take advantage. Yeah, she's covering her ass.
and
She's
gaslight
taking
and
the,
rebrand. That's all she's
Yeah.
doing.
she's taking this and basically saying, hey, you know the things you've been feeling the last 2 or 3 years in hospitals? It's not because I have failed
No,
you. It's
couldn't
because the
possibly
federal
be.
government has failed you.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
it's
Right.
just passing the buck.
It's Trump. That's all. That's what this reads to me. Like, yeah. It's the other party. It's those bad Republicans.
It's those bad Republicans. I hate giving her any credit. I will give her the whole conversation about tax cuts for high income earners. I would say that if you're going to give tax cuts to anyone, it should be everyone, not just a specific subset of
Sure.
people.
Yep.
But if you're going to do tax cuts, which I'm all for, forget tax cuts, abolishing tax, which would be my
Yeah, of
dream.
course.
But if you're going to do cuts, the cuts should be evenly distributed, should be so on and so forth. So I will give her the credit in terms of this is a Republican trickle-down economics fallacy that they've had for decades. The idea that if you take these cuts and give it to these top earners, that somehow it trickles down. This has not been the case so far. Not saying it's impossible. Also, the idea would be like these people will go ahead and reinvest this money. The issue with that, and this is more like a general, more like a macroeconomic conversation, that would be a valid argument if more than 70% of the entire wealth in the US is not held by like 6 companies on the S&P 500. So like you literally have, it's actually 7 now because of NVIDIA. So you have 7 companies right now that basically make up, I think it's like almost 90% of the entire value of the S&P 500.
Right.
So like it's very, 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 very centralized. This idea of taxation breaks being able that becomes reinvestment happens when you have this money that's being reinvested by a large breadth of commerce. When every company is going, great, we all got more money, let's go spend it. But when it's like 7 companies that have most of the wealth, when you don't have a Main Street anymore, everything is Walmart and Amazon and so on and so forth. These economic policies were very popular in the 50s, 60s, 70s because we just lived in a different economic reality. Like you could do things like that then, and they probably did have actual impact because a mom and pop shop who got a tax break because they were in a certain bracket of income can now hire 2 more servers for their restaurant. Like
Right.
these things had an actual effect. But like when everything is Applebee's, Longhorn, and God knows what else, like yeah, that impact isn't immediate because those things are not being operated by actual entrepreneurs. They're being operated by conglomerates with people that sit in offices hundreds of miles away from those actual locations. So like
Hey, and
I do
something,
think, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
just something kind of interesting with the whole thing, and you guys may already know this. Do you know how many billionaires there are in the state of Maine?
Like,
There's
do
many.
we
Like
actually know
3?
the number?
We know the number.
Yeah,
I
we
would
definitely know the-
guess 18.
1.
Really?
There's
I said
1,
3.
and that family has pretty much, it's the Alfond. It's the granddaughter of Alfond.
Yeah,
I mean,
Hilarious.
that family's pretty much funded half of the infrastructure. I mean, paid for
Wymans
the
aren't
hospital of
billionaires?
Augusta. One billionaire. And she
The
didn't
the
even make it herself. Her father made the money.
the Wymans aren't billionaires?
No, so it's, actually living in the state. I looked it up the
Oh,
other
okay.
day. She's the only
That's
the daughter
hilarious.
of Alphonse. She's the only billionaire in the state.
Wow.
And again, I mean, that family has definitely paid their fair share at funding.
I would agree.
Shoot, my kid just got $500 from them for being born.
Yeah.
I mean, what more can you ask for, really? So
Yeah. It's insane. She, again, like we said, she's just trying to take the blame off herself and pass it on to somebody else. And the sad
Yeah.
thing is, there's a lot of voters that will just that'll take it hook, line, and sinker. They just will.
That's what I mean. This is what happens when and I don't mean to be insulting to the voter base of just general public, but people don't have the time to know what actually is occurring,
Yeah, cool.
right? They don't, and that's part of the structure of why this all works in the way that it does, right?
Yeah, I agree. When you say that, I think of my in-laws, my father-in-law in particular, who sits in the same chair he sat in for the last 10 years. He relaxes at the end of the day. He turns on local Maine news at 6 p.m. They tell him what's happening in the state, and that's information that he has.
Yeah,
And then he will vote based on that.
right.
And his age demographic is the majority age demographic in the state. So I'm willing to bet that is a vast majority of how most of the electorate who actually is voting. So let's be honest, the people who vote in Maine are above the age of 50. Like people like us who are politically active, yeah, we vote, but
Yeah.
like the average median voter in Maine, I think, is like 52 years old. So it's not a bunch of like 32-year-olds coming out.
Is that
to,
not
like,
turning around though? Like I feel like I saw a stat recently that Gen Z is certainly very politically active, like as far as like
extremely,
participating in governance.
extremely, they don't live here.
Well, that's fair. Yeah.
That's the thing. Like if we had a younger population, that would be like that. That's how, honestly, that's how places like, whether you hate it or like the state, that's how Florida went from being a blue state to being purple to being red in less than a decade.
Yeah.
Because we had all these young kids who were going to South Beach to work at these new tech jobs.
Yeah.
This is
I mean,
how,
Texas too, a little bit.
yeah, Texas is the same way. Tennessee, that's how Tennessee went to.
Yep.
South Carolina, that's how that happened there. Those states absorbed a lot of a younger population, mostly because of cost of living,
Right.
where a young family could go there, they could buy a house from
Kentucky.
that,
Yeah.
Kentucky, and
Yep.
because they were younger then and they were politically active, they were able to flip those states. I don't want to say red because like red is good or anything like that, but like they can move it more in that trajectory away from some of the things that we're seeing happening here in the state of Maine. Like it's just it's a demographic problem at the end of the day.
Yeah.
With that being said, let's talk about some local level politics. So we do have a District 94 election that's coming up, and we have a slide deck that was provided for us to go over some of the candidates and
just
give our audience an introduction to them.
real quick for those that don't know. So in District 94, it was a Democrat that was elected, Kristen Cloutier. She resigned her position to go be the chief of staff for the Senate president. So that's why this is open. The election is on the 24th. So Tuesday will be the election for this. Two candidates. We'll start with Scott Harriman. So I can go ahead and read through the slides. Scott Harriman, he's the Democrat. He's been on the Lewiston City Council now. I think this is he's been there for 3 terms. He kind of works with the schools there. Definitely really kind of seems to align in the progressive Democrat camp. You look at, I included this statement from the Maine People's Alliance and their endorsement of him because I think it really gets past the bullet points. So those are his bullet points off of his website on the top there. But, it really gets after things like using public funds for housing. He's worked in housing within Lewiston, using public funds to open housing options. Healthcare, the healthcare is a human right, making sure healthcare is more affordable, but it's, really using public funds, public taxes to fund progressive projects within the state. I mean, some of these are necessary. Just within, we talked about it earlier, the kind of the structure of Lewiston and the economic situation in Lewiston. But
I'm
yeah,
gonna,
here
I'm gonna
again, this is.
interject one thing
Go
here.
ahead.
Anything that requires the labor of others is not a right. Just full stop. So these comments of healthcare is a human right, it's a nice idea, but it requires the labor of others. So it's not, you're not entitled to that. Like there's a market there.
Oh yeah, not my words, his words.
Right. No, I know. I just wanted to interject that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, sorry, we'll bring that back up. Any other comments for John Harriman? We'll bring up Janet Bowden if you want.
So I'm gonna write off, because we've touched on it so much already in this episode. The fourth bullet point: ensure that our immigrant, refugee, and asylum-seeking neighbors are protected.
What does that mean?
Correct. Like, and especially when you're talking about Lewiston, where we just went over with some of the stuff that happened with the Lewiston shooting money, thing that's happening with the autism funding. Like, this is one of those things where when I see that, the same way that Mill's talking about a $300 check, I consider it to be a bribe.
Yeah.
Whenever you are making one of your major planks, ensuring that an immigrant, refugee, and asylum-seeking neighbors are protected, I can't help but believe that you're signaling.
Of course
You're
you
saying,
are.
like, hey, like, I know what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
I might not even like what you're doing, but like, if you come out and vote, or you go ahead and push people in your community that do vote to come and vote for me, know that the status quo will continue. Because there's no chance in hell that someone who wants to ensure refugee and asylum-seeking neighbors are protected is not going to go, now I'm going to go arrest all of you guys for fraud.
Right.
Like, it's not going to happen. Like, if they're an antithesis of one another.
And we know
So,
that already because his party is already in power in this state, and they haven't done shit to mitigate or to go after any of these allegations of fraud. They haven't even started to investigate these things.
and like, again, like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you're going to say that you're going to ensure that immigrant, refugee, and asylum-seeking neighbors are protected, that is going to require funding to do so. But then if you're going to do tax reform and funding programs to help people get money back, but actually, I think this is actually hilarious. He doesn't say, I'm going to help all Mainers.
No.
I'm going to help older Mainers. So, like, again, it's the same thing that you're pandering to, like, you're making
More
it
signaling.
you're overtly telling people, hey, if you are of this demographic group, I got your back. The rest of the state, good luck. And that's how I read this.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think another important point, and it's not included in this, it was some of the other research I've done. I'm going to read verbatim. He says he will support law enforcement and community partners to expand gun safety laws and reduce gun violence, making our neighborhoods safer. And we all know what that's code for.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. That.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say the unpopular thing. If you want to do that, then you can ensure that your immigrant, refugee, and asylum-seeking neighbors are protected, because they're the ones that are committing most of the violence in Lewiston.
Yep. I mean, the
It just is what it
facts
is.
speak for themselves.
I know that the Maine Wire shared this. I know Dane
Yeah,
and Matt
I've seen that.
where you see where most of the shootings over the last 6 years are taking place in Lewiston, and it's all happening near community housing for immigrant, refugee, and asylum-seeking peoples. That's where it's all happening. Not to say that they're responsible for 100%, but I damn well would say probably close to 90%. So if you're going to enforce that policy, that I'm going to expand protection from gun safety, like, you're gonna have to go ahead and go to those same communities that are voting for you. Are you gonna go do that? I'm willing to bet that you're not. It's like I can't take anything you're saying serious. Even things like that that sound. I know for us, we know what it means. Like we know what it's code for. But for the average voter, I think the average person has to think this through. And if you live in the town of Lewiston, you need to be honest. Where is this happening? Like where are all the gunshots taking place? What communities are they? Are they Mainers? Are they people who've been in that community for 35 years? I'm willing to bet not.
Right.
And if they aren't, what's going to get done about it? And is this guy going to do what needs to be done? If he's not, then I don't know what to tell you. I think it's just that simple.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see what the Republicans have for a candidate.
God help us.
Yeah, so Janet Bowden, she not a whole lot for her.
Is she new to politics?
So seems like she rose up back in 2021 out of, from what I could kind of gather, there was some, trans in schools arguments going on that she got involved in back and
But she's like
forth
school
with.
board, right?
I'm sorry.
She's school board.
So
Lewiston,
I think she was not at that time.
Okay.
And she started going back and forth and then ran for school board and was elected to the school board, Ward 2 within Lewiston. And she's been reelected a few times onto the school board there. But that's really her political prowess is a member of the Lewiston school board.
Wow, there's a lot. There's a lot to parse here.
Yeah, I mean,
already,
a lot
already,
of it,
I see like crackdown on the drug epidemic. Okay, what does that mean? What are you gonna do? Shift accountability based recovery on mandates treatment. Clean up your streets from strict 1-to-1 needle exchange. Why?
And this is where me and you will differ on this. Dane is like this is where I think I want to go down like a whole philosophy rabbit hole, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it. But I think this is an honest conversation that needs to be had. I actually brought this up on a post on Facebook a little while ago. Liberty and freedom are not just the liberty and freedom to do what one wants. It's the liberty and freedom to do what one ought, if they so choose to interact with others. So, like, if you live on an island, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Like, who cares?
Right.
Like, do what you want, do whatever you want. Like, let your freak flag fly.
Right. You're in a community here.
However, if you're in a community, your freedom and liberty
affect others.
Right.
Yep.
So, although I am sympathetic to the general libertarian idea of like decriminalizing drugs, like I don't even have an issue like the general principle on narcotics, the libertarian view. I don't have necessarily like any kind of apprehension towards. My issue is that whenever we have some of these conversations with libertarians, we're having them in a vacuum, where it's not like if you increase the amount of people who are using these narcotics, one, how many of these people are going to, like, this isn't weed. Let's be like frank and honest. Like,
for sure. Yeah.
Like if these are going to be far more available, is going to be like 1% more of the population that's engaging in it? Is it going to be 3%? Is it going to be 8%? Is it going to be 22%? And what is the consequence to the society at whole? Because, for example, let's say it is 22%. I'm not saying that would actually happen. Let's say it is. And some other 22%, you're always going to have overdose. Like these things are going to happen. Some people just don't know when to stop. Like these things are going to happen. How are those things going to get paid for when those things happen? It's going to come from tax revenue. So by trying to create a system that allows the maximum freedom, you're also creating a system that's going to propagate the same taxation and intervention at the state and federal level that you're also against. They go hand in hand. Perfect example of this is Seattle, is Washington State.
Fair. Yeah.
Like, I'm not against it. I'm not saying like, hey, go like I'm not like war on crime, rah rah rah. That's not the argument I'm making. But I am trying to say is that Maine, for example, we know that we have an opioid crisis, and we know a lot of it is because of depression, because the mills are gone. We don't have infrastructure that works. We don't have good jobs. Like we just don't have those things. So if you're now increasing the amount of different kinds of narcotics that can be used in that same environment, then like what different outcome are you expecting? Like that's my only concern when we have these conversations is if Maine was a thriving community and people had a sense of community and they felt like they were on an upward trajectory, who gives a shit? Maybe they go home once in a while, they go ahead and put a needle in their arm. I would say it's morally incorrect, but they have the right to do so. Who am I to stop them?
Right.
But if you're saying that we're living in a state that is getting older, we're losing jobs, our taxes are going up, the cost of electricity is coming up, and now you're giving people needles, I'm not expecting that they're using it in a way to be like jovilant about the next bonus they just got. I'm assuming they're using it to numb the pain of having to live in the state. And when they do so, and it becomes an issue, who now has to pay to get it fixed? Because it's going to be me and you.
That's fair. I mean, one thing I do like I see here is make housing affordable with deregulation that allows private citizens to build. So she already seems to get it of that's the impetus to the housing crisis is that the barriers of entry for the market are imposed by the government, and we need to get those barriers out of the way.
Yeah. And the empowering local law enforcement thing concerns me a bit because I do fall on your side of this when it comes to law enforcement for the most part, Dane, where I don't trust law enforcement to actually enforce anything. Like I assume that they're going to go collect funds, basically, that they're basically just another arm of taxation.
Right.
So like that concerns me. But if you're going to say, hey, I'm doing this for all peoples, no matter of immigrant status, I guess that's like you're trying to basically say, I believe in rule and order, which we can go down the rabbit hole what law and order actually means to this person, but whatever. But I would agree with you. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect libertarian candidate in any of these races. But if you tell me I have to pick between someone who believes in like basic social democracy, whatever how that means, or someone who is even maybe more conservative for my taste, if I have to pick one or the other, like I don't know, I don't know what you do with that. Like it's a tough one.
Yeah, I wish we would have been able to put a candidate together for this because this seems like a layup, honestly, in this race for us.
Yeah.
I mean, but
yeah, I think
so
it's interesting.
if you want to run for office, get at us. Info at lpme.org.
What do you think,
So
Matt?
one thing that does get us into the last thing for the evening is we were going to talk about running for local elections, and if you'd like, I can kind of lay out what I talked about and let you guys go. So, I'm from New Hampshire originally, and the Libertarian Party really has kind of, for all intents and purposes, taken a foothold in New Hampshire. And the real reason for that is New Hampshire has the largest House of Representatives of any state. It has over 400. It is over 400 representatives in a state of 1.3 million people.
That's awesome. That means that there's far less people per representative. Which is exactly what the founders intended. Right?
So you have that small representation, but what you also have is a much better chance at winning an election. The reality is there are a lot of races in there that are just unopposed and people just run and you win because you're the only competitor. We obviously don't have that here in Maine. Every seat in Maine is highly sought after, highly fought over. But when you get down further than that into the municipal, county elections, that's not the case. There were seats here in Knox County not too long back that they were just searching for somebody to run. Just somebody needs to run for these seats. They were paid positions, and they were asking people to run. So as we look at trying to build a libertarian foothold and get a libertarian foothold, this idea that you're immediately going to go into the Maine House or the Maine Senate and win a seat, the reality is it's very, very slim. However, running for the select board in Lewiston, running for the city council in Lewiston, some of these smaller towns, your county positions, you do have a much higher chance at winning those elections, especially with a small input. The amount of money you might have to put into running an election might be very small, and you will win. You will be able to make a difference, but you will also be able to make a name for yourself that can carry over.
Yeah.
Somebody with an L next to their name at a Maine state or representative position has a small chance, but a name you recognize because they have done a great job in the municipality and the county, well, they have a much better chance of getting the vote. So the point to this discussion was we're getting into that window now of petition or not petition. Your names are going to be due if you want to run. You have to file your paperwork if you want to run for a municipal or county position. Start looking within your towns, within your counties for these positions that are open, and don't be afraid to run. And run under the principles of the Libertarian Party, lowering taxes. Our taxes here in Washington, last I checked, were for school board 55% of our town budget goes to the school district.
Holy cow.
Now we're a real small town, but
Yeah.
55% of our budget goes to the school district to have kids barely passing and getting the crap kicked out of them on a daily basis. I saw the videos from the high school, I think it was. So, as the select board, as the school board, et cetera, these are the positions that can affect it. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, and I'll kind of leave it to you guys.
Yeah, no,
to
I
discuss more.
totally agree with that. And that's not just, your town select board. If there's a dog catcher position, get in there. You can affect a lot more effectual change from within the structure than you can screaming about it from outside. Just to kind of piggyback on that, House District 29 is having a special election to fill a vacated seat as well coming up soon. So if anyone out there is in the Chester, East Millinocket, Grandstone Township, Hershey Township, Medway, Millinocket, Mount Chase, like that area, please get in touch with us because we would I know there's 19 of you out there registered at least. We would love to run someone in that district. Jason?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is that I think this is where there is hope to be had when it comes to politics, particularly in Maine, is that because of the foresight and I would say genius of the way that the country was founded, these positions are able to be a bulwark against policies and principles that you do not agree with. So to Matt's point, if you are on a town select board, you're in charge of zoning, and you believe that you need to have deregulation, you're in a position to now handle some of that. If you are running for sheriff, I know we have a very good friend of ours, Ben Weir, who's running for sheriff in
Merrimack County.
in New Hampshire.
Yep.
You are the sheriff. You are in a position now to dictate how enforcement takes place in your community. So, like the idea being that no matter what happens at the state level, the same way that we should focus first at the state before we do the federal, we should focus on the local before we even do the state.
Yes.
Because that is where you can actually effectuate probably the most amount of change. To Matt's point, a lot of these positions sometimes go, like I know on school, for example, school boards are some of the most interesting ones. Because like sometimes when you see depending on what school board it is, they'll go ahead and televise some of this stuff. And you'll see people run and there's like nobody there. There's like 6 people in the room. So like basically the 6 people who showed up almost guaranteed to be on the board.
Yes.
And if you're worried about things like what kind of education is happening in your school, what genders are not, or what bathrooms, like if those are things that actually concern you, like that's like an actual driving issue for you, that is a way for you to get involved and have actual effectuative change on those types of policies and principles. So I agree with you, Matt, and with Dane that if you're interested, if you are someone who's libertarian or libertarian minded, hell, if you're a freedom Republican conservative who believes in 85% of the principles that you hear on episodes like this, and you want to get involved, please reach out to the LP. Like we'd love to at least have the conversation.
Yeah.
I think that is the first step, is to actually effectuating change, is that it's surprising how many people who are concerned about the state of the state are not actively participating at these lower levels. And if that was to change, I think we'd see a lot broader change to the state more quickly.
I agree. And just to bookend that real quick, a lot of people, I think most people think that their voice doesn't matter and they don't participate because like, what can I do? I will tell you all that even at the national level, if a representative or a senator gets, 100 calls or 100 emails, that's a big deal to them at the national level. So extrapolate that down to your state level, to your town level. If your town selectman gets an email or two a week, that's quite a bit, to be honest, from a citizen that's concerned about XYZ. And the more we advocate for ourselves, the closer to our, our liberty utopia, or what the founders intended, we will get back to, because it has been usurped for decades and decades all around us. So you do have a voice and you can affect change. Just go out and do it.
Great. Jason, Dane, any last words?
I think that's good to leave it there. Appreciate you boys joining.
Well, hey, we appreciate you guys, and everybody have a great night, and we'll talk to you later.